Welcome back to the Glint Standard. Today we're going to be talking about succession plans, how they can be implemented within certain companies, and some of the questions that may arise during that time. All right, so succession plans. I know it's a big topic. A lot of companies are now looking at that because the millennials, we are on the rise. We're getting older.
Well, you're going to take over at some point, and to think you're not is foolish.
Yeah, that's always the goal, right?
Yeah.
And I know part of that was also the millennial perspective and maybe the more old school perspective. We definitely want to have that in
Right.
this.
Right.
So for me, coming here, part of that was part of a succession plan.
Right.
You didn't want the company to die on the vine. I think a lot of business owners, if they built something, they made it, like they really don't want it to just go away at the end of their career, right? So talk to me a little bit about when did those feelings really start for you that you were like, I need to find somebody to really take this over and run?
For me, it's day one. I'm trying to build something that can go long term. If you look back in history of time, most companies that have been around for, 100, 200 years, whatever that is, right? The way you know them today is not the same way you would have known them, 80 years ago. I guess 200 years back would be a really long time, but still. It's all the hard work and the start and the moving it forward. And often it takes somebody else to really take a good foundationally strong business and then take it to the next level, right? Because usually founders, people who start companies, are looking and doing all the legwork of how do I make it successful and self-sustaining, right? And by the time that happens, how old are you, right? If you start when you're 15, you might have a chance to really push it forward, right? Real innovative thinking. Things change so much over the years that being able to take that and push it forward consistently all the way through your career till you're 70, from 20 to 70, it's going to be really hard to do. Now, you can put the framework in place, make sure the foundation stays in place, but you have to be open to moving it forward, right? And someone else usually has to take that forward, and that's when people really start to know a brand really well.
So let me ask you this, because we're talking about two very different mindsets at that point.
Yeah.
Maybe stepping into the business, right? Do you look for somebody that is like-minded, like you, hits all your points, like, oh, this guy's exactly like me, he's going to be great taking over the company because that's the way I built it? Or do you look for somebody that maybe challenges the opinion to help push it forward in maybe a different manner?
Yeah, that's really hard. I don't think you want 100% of either one. It's got to be a balance, right? Personality, ethics, standards, that falls into place. I think that's what you're looking for more than anything else. Stuff is just stuff. It can all be taught, right? When you've been successful, and we've been successful over the years, there are certain things that have happened that have made us that way, right? There's our ability to see an opportunity and take that opportunity. There's ways to look at our position today or 10 years ago or whenever that was and leverage our position, right? There are times when it's hit rock bottom, and how do you manage through that process? There's a lot of learning through that's about building business and maintaining a business and keeping it strong, not so much about the work, right? The younger generation I find is coming in, it's all about the work, right? And it's really not. The work is what you're doing, and it has to be good, it has to be on point. You have to continue to adapt to it, of course, but you're talking about transitioning a business, you got to be able to do more than just produce and deliver great work. That's not going to move a business forward.
Right. So I know you and I have had this conversation, but I feel like our generation, and maybe this is just a feeling that I'm getting, our generation is very eager, right?
I agree. Yeah.
We're ready to step in. We're ready to go. And I think some people are way more prepared than others, but I think that comes with every generation.
Right.
But how do you handle that as a younger person coming in, going, hey, I'm ready to go, right? And you're maybe seeing things. I know this because we've talked about it. Maybe seeing some things that you're going, hey, pump the brakes a little bit. We need to talk about this. We need to slow down. And we have a good motto of slow down and speed up. So maybe that's the case.
Right.
But how do you translate that to somebody that's super eager and like ready?
A lot of times you can't. And you want to kill that enthusiasm either, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you want to channel it. That's kind of the goal, right? To be able to run a business, you're also having people work for you that are counting on you to deliver for them. You can't lose sight of that. And you can get going so fast with so much excitement that you'll take anything and you'll do the work, and you're not looking at the profitability. You're not looking at your margins. You're not looking at capacity. You're not looking about, if we do this, is this going to affect how other businesses look at us? It's a lot of that type of thing because you just want to deliver something awesome. And a lot of times it's the wrong thing to deliver. Sometimes it's great to deliver, but you've got to channel it in a way, like how does that help the agency move forward, right? And when you're coming in to want to take over, you have to remember that although a company may be in a really great spot right now, it was there on day one when there wasn't a penny coming in, right? And those struggles that have happened with you, with other employees that you've hired, and that process to get where you are today, nobody's thinking about that, right? So I often go, okay, if you were going to go start it today on your own, what would you do? How would you go about it? And that answer tells you a lot about where the person is, right? How they answer that.
So I think that ties into kind of the next question that I have for you about it. Are there must-haves that you're looking for out of that person to really step into those types of roles?
Okay, so our industry is very different than others, right?
Fair.
But there are some commonalities between all, right? If you're going to lead and drive, you have to have the charisma and the ability to get people behind you, right? And when things go awry, you have to be able to keep them driving for you anyway. Versus you come down too hard, you lose a lot of respect for people. Lose a lot of respect for you, right? So being able to manage people and multiple personalities as well to keep everybody going the same direction, it's extremely difficult. That is a talent unlike any other, right? That's not enough, right? If you can do the work as well, I believe that validates a little bit of who you are and gains a little bit more respect for people to go, wow, you've been in the weeds. You do know what it's like. So maybe I should listen, right? Well, it helps overcome some of that.
They can jump in too. That's the thing. If
they can,
push comes to shove, they can roll up their sleeves and do the work too.
And that can get you way off point for building business too, because now you're working in the business instead of working on the business, right?
Right.
You should be able to ebb and flow that, but you can't lose sight of the focus. When you start working in the business and the job and delivering on all those aspects, if that's all you do, your pipeline is going to be dead after a while, and your business is not going to be here. You have to balance that. So as the person at top, right, and it's where everybody wants to go, you do have to do both. There's no way around it, but you have to be very clear with yourself how you're going to do that. And part of that requires you to be self-motivated. And a lot of people say I am. But are you? At the end of the day, when every decision solely falls on your shoulders, be them beneficial to the business, maybe they're hard decisions, you have to lay people off. Those are all real things you have to deal with. And nobody likes to deal with conflict typically. And if you do love conflict, maybe you're not good at the other side. But you have to understand it all and do things for the right reason, make decisions for the right reason. But it can be very challenging at times to get the right personality to think about that. And then take all that away, you've got a whole financial aspect. You've got accounting. You've got to look at your numbers, manage your numbers, be able to push them forward. What's your seasonality of the business? Do you know what that is? Do you have a sales plan for the business? What's that look like? What's your year-end recap look like? How are you delivering that to your employees? Now, you may have a sales manager or a director of sales, right, that should be supplying a sales plan, right? But you have to be able to look at that and go, yeah, that makes sense. That's on point. But they may be delivering it in a way that you wouldn't necessarily do it, right? If you can't, at the top, if you can't figure out a way to bring opportunity into the business, the business isn't going to be here. Whether you do it yourself, or you can hire somebody who's really good at just that aspect and manage that person and build that team from that, and you're really good at managing the team, that's great. At the end of the day, you have to be able to bring business in, though.
Right.
Some way you have to affect that because you're the person doing that, right?
Yeah.
So that's step one, I think, is delivering that. And it's sweat equity is another big piece that everybody talks about. I put in this time. I should be getting paid more than I am. So that's my sweat equity. How do I put that into place? Or I'm going to cut my salary down to 30 grand a year and I want sweat equity so I can own, 10, 20% of the business, that kind of thing. And that's great.
Yeah.
But you still have to deliver on all of these points to move the business forward, which is business development. It's managing people. It's managing partners. It's managing clients. It's fixing the bathroom if the toilet doesn't work. It's everything. You might have people doing all those things for you, but you have to make sure they're doing it well.
Right.
So how do you deliver on those things? But you have to be able to check those boxes off. And that's how I look at it, right? Because if you can't sustain the business on your own without, say, me here, right, as an example, then maybe it is best to let it die in the vine, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how you start to look at it. Now, as an owner, at some point I would love to retire, right? I don't know if I'll ever be able to do it 100% because I do absolutely love what I do. I do. It's going to be hard, but I can come off the golf course and come in here and screw a lot of things up, which could bring me great joy too. But I think it's, keeping, as you start to step away, you keep that advisory role. You create your board, and that's a big piece of it too, right? Do you create a board? Why do you create a board? What's it for, right? And help manage the team that's starting to take over. You help guide that pathway. At some point, you got to let the reins loose, and that's not going to be an easy day either.
So I think that's from my standpoint and what I see in a lot of it, not just in our business, right? I feel like you and I both have very good open communication, which can be very rare in succession plans. It's the one thing that I would encourage the maybe old school generation to take into advisement is really, am I being open about this? Am I listening for the other person to give me feedback? Because eventually you're not going to be there, right? And eventually that person's going to have to run. And so you want to make sure that you're both on the same point with that. I 100% know what you want to achieve. And so, and I'm fine with that. That's the thing. I know that that's what you want to accomplish, and I know my role in that.
Right.
So I think that's really important. And the other thing that I would say is, from a younger person's perspective, that is coming in, and we're not always younger, but the person coming in.
You're always going to be younger than the old guy, though.
That's true.
And then when you say younger, that's how I refer to it. It could be 30, could be 40, could be 50, could be 20. I mean, it doesn't matter. You're going to be younger, right?
Yeah, and I think from our perspective, the thing that I would always encourage people to do is to really push for those open conversations. The worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say, no, we can't talk about that. But the best thing that can happen is you can start to have conversations about what does equity look like? What's the buy-in? What does that look like from a management standpoint? How do we communicate there's a new boss? All of these challenges that you will face as you start to transition, you can start to address years in advance from it actually happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the benefit of the young person really stepping forward and going, hey, I want this. I am eager. If that's not being communicated, then you're going to be in the same spot.
Yeah, and you look at someone like me and here's that, right? Great. I know that doesn't mean jack. Because what it comes down to is good questions going into that. Because so when I'm eager, I want it. Okay, who doesn't, right? Some don't, but most, I want more, and I want to run the place someday. Instead, if the people who are serious about it are going, okay, what steps do I have to take to move forward to get into a position to help impact this company so that eventually maybe I can have a piece of it or help move it forward and get some gain off of that ownership. And that's what I really want to do. And what does that look like, right? And you take those steps. And when you hear, well, yeah, you're not ready. You're not even close to being ready, right? Then, okay, fantastic. I get that. What kind of things are the steps that I can take now to start moving towards it? Now you're having a different kind of conversation, right? That's a little deeper. People know you've thought it through. It's not just off the cusp one day, I want to run this place, or I'm going to run it. You know what I mean? And it's fun to hear that sometimes, but at the end of the day, that doesn't say anything, right? The other side of it too is there's a whole financial side of it, right? Nobody's going to give you anything, right? You have to buy in, right? You have to have lines of credit or whatever that is to fall back on if the agency starts to have challenges and struggles, because it will. And sometimes you got to fall on that to move it forward. And if you believe in what you're doing, right, and everyone around you, and you've hired the people that are trusting you, you have to be willing to take that risk to move it forward. But you also have to be smart enough to go, you know what, there's too much risk in that. We're going to have to do some layoffs. We're going to have to cut back. We have to change our direction and focus. Here's what we need to do. Those are very difficult decisions to make, and you have to be willing to make them, even if they're the wrong decision. You have to know deep down that you believe that's the right pathway, and you're moving forward, and the right people will follow you down that pathway. And the ones that won't, they'll probably go away. And then you kind of have to start over, right? But if you believe in it, that's what you do. That's a hard decision to make. It's easiest to get up, go to work every day, even if especially if you're successful, right? Whatever that means to you. And just kind of keep growing, right? It's not really what it's about.
Right.
It's adapting and changing and willing to step back to move forward as well, and knowing that has to happen. And that can be a very challenging thing to have to do. Why are you doing all the things you are today, right? Why are you paying rent at this building, at this location? What's the reason for that? Prestige. It helps the bottom line. Makes the employees feel good. So boosts morale. I mean, there's a reason, right? And the reasons may be different for everybody, right? Or should you go buy a place and own it? Because now you're building equity. Now you're leaning into your retirement and you're thinking about that. And it moves the agency in ways that you can control costs. So there's benefit there too. So you start to think about all these different pathways, but leadership is not thinking about what are we getting done today, right? They're not thinking about what's this month look like for us. We're thinking about 6 months from now, a year from now, where do I want us to be? What am I doing today to get us there? Because today's already here. Everything that we needed to get to today has already been done, right? So if you're thinking about the day-to-day, that's a good sign that you're working in the business, right? And if you're only 1 month out, 30 days, you're still working in the business, right? You have to get people that can help support you so that you can think a bigger picture. And that's what that means, bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
It's not about, I want everyone to have an employee car one day and it's really cool. It would be really cool. That's not what I'm talking about though, right? If you make the right decisions to build the business where it needs to go, all those things fall into place.
Right.
And if that's a goal, write it down, right? So the planning for having someone else take over, it's really hard. And it's, from my perspective, really hard to let go.
Lots of facets.
For sure, yeah.
that could be touched. We could probably talk about this for hours.
I probably could. I feel like I've rambled a lot in this podcast. So I may have missed a few points here or there. But if there are points that I rambled over too much and you want to know more about them, happy to deliver the best way I can to let you know how at least I think about it. And I think reading some books on business, getting some good understanding, getting some mentors, getting other people that you believe are successful, just talking. Yeah. One of the best ways to move your business forward, for sure.
Excellent. Well, if you have any additional advice or any questions, comments, anything like that, please feel free to leave that below or just send us an email, agency@theglintstandard.com. We do read it. We're happy to answer any of the questions that come through.
Yeah, and apparently I'm out, so I'm out. You probably won't see me anymore.
Done with this podcast.
So. Yeah, thanks.